Okay, so this is the Phil and Ben podcast, episode 1. And we are going to walk our way through this next hour with a few plans. But basically, the whole point of this, Phil, I think you'll agree, is just to go with the flow and be who we are and just share what we've got to share with the world. Is that right?
Exactly. That's exactly right, Ben. I think that's why we chose our name, Phil and Ben, because we're two men living in Thailand at different ends of Thailand. We're good mates, and we always talk and have great discussions. So we thought that we'd like to share it with the world. We've got various answers, we've got various questions, we've got various understandings. And we don't tend to disagree much, but disagreements, in my view, are very healthy because they're the stuff of exploration. So yeah, exactly.
And as we said, this is for primarily good souls, life lovers, and world helpers.
Yeah.
And I know for me, I'm probably going to ask that you remind me of that as much as possible, because it's very easy with the grounds that we cover, even in our calls offline, to get swamped in worlds of darkness and to kind of get lost down the rabbit hole sometimes. And knowing that for me and for you, what we're trying to do first and foremost is connect to these good souls out there, the life lovers, the people that love life overall, not just people that enjoy life, but life in the broadest sense, life, the smallest creatures to to the biggest, most beautiful animals and whales and elephants, the magic of nature, like waking up in the morning and watching a sunrise and just it having its majesty like actually swarm over you, like loving life, right?
Yep.
And then the world helpers out there, the people, I think, that we, and some people are going to be all three, right? But the people out there that intrinsically, whether you consciously say it to yourself or not, like I do, I know that I'm actively wanting to help the world, but people that out there are helping the world, whether it be helping animals, helping children, helping the elderly, helping change the world for the better. So good souls, life lovers, and world helpers. And I know that you agree, Phil, that represents the vast majority of humanity, right?
Well, definitely. The one problem that many people have is the stresses that that impact upon us, that keep us away from being who we are. But I think the nub of spiritual living, of which I'm going to talk a lot about, and I'm sure we'll discuss. And spirituality is one of those words that has various connotations, but the whole nub of spiritual living is that if you love the world and if you love all earth dwellers, we could call them that, because that encompasses humans and amoebas and hyenas and warthogs and the ugly ones and the beautiful ones. But if we're all earth dwellers, and the nub of all the true religious teachings and spirituality is that if you can love the bigger picture, then you love yourself, and also if you love yourself, you love the bigger picture. So it's a two-way flow. So yeah, definitely, this is a podcast for. In fact, this podcast is actually for all human beings who simply desire to improve themselves and their world, and the two go hand in hand.
So I've got a few things to say in regards to that and what you just said. And this podcast. We're going to give ourselves basically an hour limit each week, right? We're going to try and keep it weekly and keep it to an hour, so any listeners understand the parameters of what we're trying to build here. But also, really, there is going to be a broad framework, and we'll discuss that maybe in this episode. But also, it really is a weekly chat show, right? That's what we're doing, and so I want to pull you up on a word you just used, because I don't know what it is. And so there might be people out there that don't know as well. Nub. I've never heard of that word. What's a nub?
I hope it's a real word.
Did you mean hub?
It could be hub, yeah. But I'm a fan of creating words. I mean, I bet you know what it means, even though it might not be a word.
Nub. I haven't found it.
The nub of the crux, maybe that's what I'm looking for. Yeah, the crux of things. Yeah, okay, there we go.
Nub. Oh wait, no.
Is it a word?
A protuberance or knob. a small lump. No, number three, the essence, the core.
There you go. There you go. The nub of spirituality, the essence of spirituality is
Cool.
is that we are individuals interconnected with every other earth-dwelling organism on the planet. And therefore, I quickly get this in because I love saying this: if you harm other people and harm other things, you're harming yourself. If you harm yourself, you're harming others. There you go.
Yeah, no, man, you got so much to share, as have I. And before I get onto the third thing that I wanted to say in response to your little monologue back then, another word for earth dwellers is earthlings. I think that's actually the earthling.
Earthlings.
Yeah. Earthlings is the word for anything that's alive, living and dwelling on earth. And did you know that?
Well, I know the word earthling in association as in standing in contrast to being an alien. That's what I knew earthling as.
Yeah, I suppose so, which is anything on earth, right?
But that is not an alien.
Yeah, on earth.
Whereas, well, because I'm a language teacher, so
let's do it, mate.
whereas earth dwellers, it has no contrast with anything beyond earth. It's just all encompassing of every single living organism on earth. So earthlings is fine, but you can check that if you want. But I think you'll find that earthlings is mentioned as opposed to aliens if they exist.
Yeah, well, there was this. I'm just kind of building into this film that I saw called Earthlings. Have you seen it?
No.
Oh, mate. It was one. It's a core shaker. It's about the. It's using the term Earthlings in the broader sense of encompassing animals on the same level as humans, because on that, with that word Earthling, we are all equal dwellers of Earth, and against that kind of natural inherent belonging that we all have and the right to belong and live peacefully, the way that humanity has come to use and abuse animals for different areas of our life, i.e. food, clothing, entertainment, etc. It's the sort of film that it's just harrowing. And I suppose anyone that's out there that is listening to this and hasn't seen it, it might be worth you watching it, but it does come with a warning, because if you can get to the end of it, then you're a soldier, because it's not easy to watch. What the director says, and I think it's a great line: we must see with our eyes what they have given with their lives. I just think it's a really powerful line, and it's harrowing. It's not. I mean, cutting that film would have been so difficult. Sorry, I went off a tangent there, but just, yeah, the earth dwellers, the earthlings link. And then finally, the one other thing you said there was about loving others and loving yourself. And I just want to share again with you, because you're aware of this, Phil, we mentioned in the pre-launch talks, but also with the listeners out there, that for me, loving yourself, you know, it's very cliche. It's an easy thing to say. But I think there's a lot of people struggle with that in a lot of ways. And whether it's, you know, loving yourself completely, entirely, physically, spiritually, mentally, mental struggle in itself can get in the way and be an obstruction to loving oneself. And I know that this, for me, this podcast is going to be a therapeutic process, because I have difficulties with myself. So loving yourself, loving ourselves is in itself a journey, right? And I just want to say that to any other listeners out there, because I know there are lots of people that struggle internally with their own lives. I'm exactly the same. And this process of speaking with you each week, given our circumstances, where we are, which we're going to get into in a minute, for me personally, because I am so detached from the world that I knew, as I mentioned to you before, this is really almost a therapeutic process, speaking with you and letting out and having some people to share the struggles in my own world, not going to, not going to the world of like, oh, let's just a sob story and playing victim, but just letting that being a therapeutic process to share with you and others. And so, yeah, just to kickstart that, loving ourselves in itself is quite a challenge for many reasons.
Well, look, I think being able to express your ideas and articulate your understandings, and having a willing listener is always therapy. In that therapy is designed to make us heal and feel better and live with more peace and joy and so on. So and in our world today, which is run by, or they attempt to run it by, the media, you're not meant to say this, you can't say that, and so everybody's treading on eggshells, and therefore they can't get their therapy because they can't speak or won't speak for fear of being ostracized, which is huge. So and so the self-love, if you have self-love, once you've developed it, then you will do minimal self-censorship, and you will speak your mind, but because you actually love yourself. If you love yourself, if I love myself, which I do, but it sounds strange as you say, but why am I going to hurt you? Because if I hurt you, hurting is the antithesis of real love. So love is a protection, and love is a protection against the possible stressors and miseries out there. So love, in fact, is like a, well, I mean, we all know the word mindset, but I use the word heart set. It's your heart is oriented. It's awake, aware, and expanded, and your heart is very much part of who you are. And we will talk a lot about education because that's my field. But the schools,
Both of our fields.
yes, indeed. And well, you'll know probably more than me because you actually worked in the schools, whereas I teach adults. But for me, the school systems are anti-love, they're anti-heart, they're heart denied, whereas real learning is heart-based learning. One final thing on that, self-respect is the beginning of self-love. So
I was going to use that word. I was just going to bring that up. I was going to say, not maybe beginning with respecting yourself, and that being the basis of self-expression, that self-respect.
You mentioned that about the earthlings and about how that means that every living organism is equal, whereas I would just sort of slightly change that and say that every living organism is deserving of equal respect.
Yeah, I think that's a much better way of phrasing it, because
so when we respect others, then we're going to respect ourselves, and if we respect ourselves, we're going to respect others. So there's a two-way flow. So if you're finding one difficult, go the other route, and then eventually you'll meet in the middle, and both will happen.
And I think a saying that kind of rounds that off, I read in a book called Conversations with God, was any form of attack is a cry for help on some level. Yeah. And so there you go, in terms of loving yourself or not loving yourself, and therefore attacking others. And that's something that helps me when I kind of stumble upon someone that, maybe they're digging for something, or they're just being a little bit narky, or whatever it is, that actually it's the hole in themselves that is a result of them wanting to bring other people down, like the trolls out there or whatever. And so, yeah.
Well, you come into the time angle here, because they might just be stressed for that day and lash out or hurt you inadvertently and not actually choosing to do that. It's the subconscious mind that's doing that. Or if you're living in a very stressful environment and you've got a tough job and you're struggling with your relationships at home, and this is going on for days, weeks, months, years, then or you were brought up in an environment that hurt you, and you may be, and they talk about trauma and traumatized people, but I think that you could be hurt just for one day, or you could be underlying within your core psyche, you are hurt. And this is, for example, psychopaths and narcissists and so on. And it's very easy to decry and have a go at the narcissists and so on, but they're living with themselves 24/7. They're the ones who lose out most of all. And you can't correct a narcissist by attacking them. The only way you can correct anybody or allow them to correct themselves or heal themselves is with love and respect, in my view.
And I think that in terms of picking up on something you just said there as a way to transition into where we are physically. You mentioned someone might just be having a bad day, and I can certainly resonate with that at this point in my life, because it's full of challenge. And being a father of 3 children, also running a small Montessori toddler class in our home, and also being a very, very active and relied upon stay-at-home father, as well as someone that wants to help the world in help the world in various ways, and kind of has launched various projects. I'm just finding myself absolutely overwhelmed in the daily grind right now. There's minimal time for myself, and that does result in sort of like walking that tightrope of snappiness, right? And so I might not. No, I think I usually, because we live. Basically, that brings it back to where we live. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to transition to where we both are, and I think it's important for us to share that with the listeners in this first episode. But to finalize and round off what I was saying, because we are where we are, Phil, and surrounded by such lovely people in a wonderful culture, very accepting. The culture itself here, the land, the environment really does nurture me, and kind of, I suppose, stop me from getting to a breaking point of rudeness with the people in an everyday life.
So where are you?
Where are we? Yeah, I don't know if you mentioned it, but we are broadcasting from Thailand, both Phil and I, right? And we met here.
Yeah. I did mention Thailand, but the listeners might not have picked up on that. We're both in Thailand. I live in Chiang Mai. Ben did live in Chiang Mai. That's where we met, and then he moved down south to Surat Thani. Yeah.
Nope.
Chumpon. But Chumpon. Okay, you're sort of south of part of Surat Thani. Anyway, okay, so yeah, in the south. And many people listening may well know of Koh Samui and Koh Phangan, and they are in fact in Surat Thani province, and Chumpon is next door.
Yeah, that's right. So if you know Koh Samui or Koh Tao, I live on the mainland, but level in terms of latitude with those islands.
Well, Koh Tao is actually Chumpon.
Is it? Oh,
yes.
Yeah, we're level with Koh Tao, but not Samui. So that might explain why we're in Chumpon and not Surat Thani.
Yes,
it's a latitude thing. I.e., if the island on a latitude level is level with the province, that island falls under that province.
Yeah. I don't know how they do it, because you've got. I mean, it just borders are borders, aren't they? Artificially.
Chiang Mai, man. I mean, that's where we met. And if you haven't been to Chiang Mai as a listener, I suppose some of our first listeners might be mutual friends in Chiang Mai, that will look up, see on their feed, oh my God, Phil and Ben have started a podcast. What's it going to be like? So if you're listening, hello, whoever you are, in Chiang Mai. But yeah, Chiang Mai, if you haven't been there, anyone listening, it's a magical city, right?
It is. It's full of magic. I called it, when I first came here in 2002, I very quickly called it let me get this right, the adventure playground surrounded by a natural wonderland.
Yeah. And I mean, when I landed in 2014, spent 4 years there, about 4 years. Yeah. And it was certainly observable that there was an influx of development from, Chinese investment, and I'm not sure what it's like now, having not lived there for almost 5 years. But there was a balance of nature and city life with Chiang Mai. It was this lovely balance between nature, like you say. But I was wondering if it was creeping out of the balance because of the influx of investment. What's it like now?
Not that I've seen. I think it's a testament to the Thai psyche and culture and mind. I think that they're balancing the old and the new, the old architecture, the new architecture, They're balancing nature and urban stuff. They're balancing, and the investment. Nothing's changing too fast, and I'm well aware of some cities and places in the world that are unknown or are unrecognizable from 20 years ago or 30 years ago. So I think Chiang Mai is doing a good job. It's inevitable that you get this so-called progress. So we'll see what happens. The one that changed more than anything for me was Koh Samui, because that was where I began. So in fact, that maybe we should just quickly introduce ourselves a little bit. So what I want to know, Ben, and I don't think you know about me either, but I can't recall how or why it is. I think you've told me, but it would be a great little story to tell everybody listening how it was that you came to be in Thailand. What made you come here? And then what made you stay?
Well, what made me come to Thailand? First of all, I'd never left Europe before traveling to Asia, and I traveled here at the age 32, 33. So I wasn't a kind of an epic traveler at all by any means. In fact, I'd never traveled alone, and I didn't plan to go to Thailand, but I'd negotiated a remote working agreement with an organization I was working with called Peace One Day. I was working in the education team, pretty much leading it.
Yeah.
And just, I think like many people out there that are now expats, just got to a point where they needed a change of scenery. It just was not working for me, London life, the rat race, and just a change of scenery. And I actually gave him my notice. No, I bought my ticket before I'd given him my notice. I used the ticket purchase as a motivation, as a necessity to give in my notice, right? I did it arse about face, did it backwards. And it was in between those two events, i.e. buying the ticket and then handing in my notice. It was in between that and then leaving that I negotiated the remote working agreement. And I say that because this is a sort of a little thumbs up to the universe and cosmic influence in the hands of faith. That when you put your path in the hands of life and you just do things that seem reckless but are actually whispers of the heart, then in ways that we can never understand or predict, life tends to look after you.
Yep.
And it did then, because it gave me a remote working agreement. So I hopped over to Istanbul to try and mend a long-term relationship that I couldn't mend. And after a month there, realizing that it wouldn't happen, I thought, I've got this remote working agreement. I've never been to Thailand, never left Europe. Let's go to Thailand. And spent a couple of days, not long, in Bangkok, got the overnight train to Chiang Mai. And I'm actually writing a book about this, as I mentioned to you, Phil. And so I won't go too deep into the story, which is truly epic. But what I would say is that I had a sliding doors moment. Have you seen that film, Sliding Doors?
No, I'm not good at movies. Whenever anybody asks me that question, it's nearly always no. I haven't seen it.
Sliding Doors is a film with Gwyneth Paltrow that essentially the whole crux of it is this woman, her two forks in her life path defined by this moment where she misses a train, the doors shut, close, or the other part, she just gets into the train and the doors shut, and how that single moment forks completely different paths.
And they show both.
They show both paths, and they do it in quite a good way visually as well. I won't spoil it too much, but I would say that the way that they do it is that one life path, she chooses to have her hair cut short, like just change her hair, change everything, right? And so it's easy to see these two versions of her, because one, she's got this different haircut. Anyway, I had a sliding doors moment. I write about it in my book that I would like to say would be published in the near future. I'm about 80-90% through.
Good work.
Yeah, but the last 20% is tough. Yeah.
Not easy.
But that sliding doors moment was truly epic, and that basically led me to not go anywhere else on my Asia adventures, but stay in Chiang Mai, because what became evident after about 48 hours, and certainly after 2 weeks and 6 weeks, was like, oh my God, this place is incredible. This is magic. The people here, the lifestyle here, the food, the weather, the culture, the nature, the freedom, you know, and
the vibration and the frequency.
And it's like, if you're a listener and you go away on holiday to a kind of a holiday destination, what you'll find is that it's easier to speak to people. People are just, because they're sort of out of their bubble of work and stress or whatever, people are just happier to start small talk, and sometimes small talk can evolve and whatnot. Well, in Chiang Mai, that happens everywhere, all the time. And more often than not, the small talk doesn't take long to go into really deep, meaningful talk, right? And so, yeah, that kind of is, does that summarize my journey to Thailand a little bit, or do you want to know a bit?
Yeah, no, it does. But I didn't hear why you actually chose Thailand ahead of other countries.
Oh, Thailand chose me, really. It wasn't that I chose it; it's that I started a family here, and
but when you left your job, you were going to go and work remotely somewhere, and I think you went somewhere before Thailand. But what made you? Why did you choose Thailand to do this instead of somewhere else?
The next jump, because again, I'll share this in more depth in the book. It's serendipitous. I've got to say, it's serendipitous. It really happened on its own.
Okay.
What I would say at this point is that I had a conversation at work that was not, that I didn't initiate. It came to me out of nowhere. And it was someone that pulled me to the side and knowing that I was going to leave, gave me a tour of how to go around Asia.
Right.
So she was like, you know, here you are. This is what you need to do this. And she basically pointed me as a circular clockwork tour around Asia, Thailand, Laos, Vietnam, down the coast of Vietnam, through Cambodia, all the temples, and chilling, and then ending off in the islands of Thailand.
Right.
I didn't ask for that conversation. And the way that it came about was, again, serendipitous, but it was the thing that made me think, right, well, as this relationship's not going to work, and I've got this remote working agreement that's covering my costs very comfortably. Not, you know, I wasn't rolling in money. I think at the time I was getting about £1,200 a month, which when you're traveling is more than enough to live comfortably. And so with that on the back of that unasked for conversation, I then went to Thailand, having never left Europe. And then it was like, and then just the magic unfolded. And I still find myself here 8 years later, and now I'm rooted here for life because I've got 3 half Thai children. So this is my home. I haven't been back to the U. We're both from England, if you didn't know, as listeners, from our accents. We're both UK born, but I haven't been back since 2019. So
same, because the world shut down for 3 years, didn't it? Went on hold.
What about you?
Well, no, so it's quite similar, actually. I mean, I wasn't planning to come to Thailand. I wanted to go to China, but a little bit longer ago, this was back in 1991 that I went traveling, and I wanted to go to China. I'd always been interested in China for some reason. I can't really remember too much, and I also wanted to travel. So I come from the south of England, Sussex, and I got the opportunity to go and work in Stockport near Manchester. And I think that my reasoning, quite apart from there being much friendlier people up north in England, sorry, Southerners, at that time, was that I could afford to buy a house. And my plan then, this is 1987, was to buy a house. And of course, at that time, house prices just went up and up and up and up. That's all it had ever done. So at some point, I was going to sell my house, not buy a new one, pocket the difference, and bugger off. And that was the big plan. Of course, when it was time and I was having such a good time living in Manchester and Stockport, great people. and really enjoyed it. It was my beer years, actually, the early to mid 20s. It was just pubs and beers and pool and darts and music and festivals and concerts and everything.
And those were the good days of festivals and music,
Well,
right?
Manchester was buzzing at that time as well, because this is the 1980s. So that was the big Manchester scene. And so all the nightclubs that were the inn clubs were in Manchester. I didn't really go to them, but so anyway, the time came for me to go and travel. And then, of course, what happens? All the house prices plummet. So at the end of the day, I was now determined to go, and I was going to go with a friend. We couldn't get visas for China because it wasn't long out of the Cultural Revolution and Chairman Mao. And it was too difficult to get visas for a period of time. So meanwhile, a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, Dave, if you're listening, Dave, had been to Thailand with his girlfriend, and they'd just come back, and they'd been to Thailand for about 8 months, and they were living almost like a Robinson Crusoe life, and this just really appealed to me. And I thought, okay, well, I'll make it Thailand then. And I got the Lonely Planet book at the time, and I was looking at the prices, and I thought, this is fantastic. 40 pence for breakfast, 2 quid or 3 quid for 4 quid for your bungalow on the beach. It was just looked like heaven. And so, but at the end of the day, when it was actually time to go, I had 1,000 quid, and I only bought a one-way ticket, because that way I had more spending money. And I had this, and listeners may wonder, well, how was I going to get home once the money had run out? Well, and the idea was to be there for about 6 months. Originally, it was a year, but then, I changed that to 6 months. And I had a little list of 6 schools that I'd researched, English language schools in Bangkok. And I had this vague idea that I might be able to get an English teaching job somewhere in Bangkok. Anyway, so I went to Thailand, and I lasted about over 3 months, 3 or 4 months, including Chiang Mai. And I had about 7 weeks in Koh Samui in my little bungalow.
And what year was this then?
This is 91. And Samui was just absolute pure heaven in capital letters. And I went trekking in Chiang Mai. I'd been to the Notting Hill Carnival, and then a few days later, I was in Thailand. That was the last thing I did in England. Suddenly, I'm trekking in the mountains of Thailand, no electricity, and one village didn't even have any toilets. So it was unbelievable. And anyway, eventually the money ran out, and we'd gone to Malaysia for 2 weeks because we'd heard you might better get a job there. And my mate, he couldn't face up to English teaching, whereas I didn't want to go back to England in the middle of this brutal winter.
Right.
So anyway, maybe I'll tell the story in a future episode, but basically I trod the streets in Bangkok for 2 days. And on the first day I made some errors. And then on the second day I'd learned my mistakes and landed a job. And, I came out of that school, I was dancing and singing and, whacked by the Bangkok heat, straight back to Khao San Road, which is the traveler's haunt in Bangkok. And all my travel mates were really chuffed for me. 2 days later, I'm going to this school on the outskirts. So I'm beach bum to tie and shirt in a few days. And that was Thailand. And then, like you, I already loved every single thing about Thailand, everything. And now I was teaching adults, and in each class there was more girls than boys, or more women than men, and most of them were extremely beautiful. And suddenly, this is my job. What's going on? And I was living now. I was lent the money to get my first apartment. And there was no other Farang, and Farang being foreigners in Thailand, no other Farang. I was the only one in the northern suburbs of Bangkok, and so I was a little bit of a celebrity, or a minor celebrity, without the media. It was beautiful. And then I got into the job, and and so now I have accidentally found out that teaching adults was my vocation in life. No idea. I couldn't wait to get out of schools. So what's happened is that as much as I love Thailand, I now had this job that I absolutely loved, and they paid me for it. And then I kept going down to Samui every 3 months, or Koh Phangan or Koh Tao. And so, the 90s were just, and this is the last time before the internet became mainstream. So it's beautiful. And yeah, so here I am. So now I've been here. Astute, mathematically oriented listeners will realize I've now been here for 33 years, a third of a bloody century. And and the only other thing to say there is I did go back to England in 2000 for a year and a half to study my master's in teaching and language and so on. And when I came back, that's when I had 2 years off, and then I began teaching other English teachers doing their masters, and now I was teaching language and psychology and relationships and group work and meaning and so on, and I could now see laser-eyed through all the media nonsense and all the propaganda, which I know you'll be talking about. And so, you know, it was perfect.
What brought you to that? Just you're saying you could see clearly through it.
Well,
What
because when
sorry, I missed the link. How you got to that
yeah,
point? What was it that brought you this awareness?
good point. I was always I've always read millions of books, and I've always enjoyed
You've always
writing.
read millions.
Well, you know, thousands, a load of bloody books since I was a kid, and it never stopped. And I always loved writing, and I loved language. And in the 90s, before I went back to England to study in 2000, I was beginning to get enraged by all the crimes that are going on in our world. And I've outlined all this in my book, but I was getting absolutely enraged by particularly America, Britain, and France and what they were doing to our world.
Right.
And I was feeling, you know, I was living in
When
my
was
own.
this?
Well, this is in the mid 90s, so I was living in my own beautiful personal heaven. But whenever I read the books, and the Bangkok Post and the Nation in those days were true newspapers, fantastic stuff. And so I was reading about what was going on in our world, which you don't read about, or you didn't read about in England at the time when you were living there. And this sent me on my spiritual journey, because I suddenly realized one day, hang on, I'm getting angry, I'm getting enraged, but these criminals are continuing with their crimes, and me, I'm just losing out double. So that's when I started. That's what I. But what I did, so what I did do, exactly, I couldn't do anything about them. So what I then did was, being in a Buddhist land, there was no shortage of spiritual kind of books available. So I started my spiritual journey. And meanwhile, for many years, I've been on my hammock in the islands, swinging around for 2 weeks, thinking, well, how can humans be so beautiful and so brutal? How does that work? And so I've always been in pursuit of understanding of the human condition, and I feel that's what we're basically doing on this podcast is talking about our take on the human condition and the human world. But then when it got to 2000, I went to do my master's. I was studying first language acquisition, second language acquisition, language and psychology, language and sociology. And so I was suddenly seeing how language worked. And now, even though I knew the media were lying and bullshitting and so on, now I could understand it. And now I could understand the difference, for example, between opinion, inference, and fact, and how we all give opinions, but we assume without knowing that they are the facts. And this is the root of all the conflicts and arguments that go on. So now suddenly I'm back in Thailand, and now I get my job teaching at the university here in Chiang Mai, teaching about language and meaning and understanding. And it was a revelation, because now I can do the opposite of propaganda. I can help people see through all the propaganda and see through all the conditioning and undo it. And it's just fantastic.
I think that leads nicely into the why we're doing this. You know, seeing through the propaganda, that is a big one, right? Yeah. And for the good souls and the life lovers and the world helpers out there, one broad sort of goal that we have is to help each other on this path during this time of clear transition in the world.
Turbulent
transition. So this podcast, you know, both Phil and I have a great deal to share, because we've been sunk into these spiritual journeys, researching actively about the operations of the world, the human condition, the relationship between the environment and the participants within the environment, the so-called controllers, etc., etc. And as you said, Phil, the media manipulation. And what's clear to us, at least, is that, yeah, we are now in a time of very serious and turbulent transition. And this podcast is not, I would say, from my side of things, not for the sleepers out there, the people that can't see through the media manipulation.
They wouldn't have got this far yet.
They won't. Yeah, they won't be listening to this. It's that simple.
Anymore.
I would like to think that we might reach out to some fence sitters along the way. I'd really be interested in fence sitters, because people that are kind of since 2020, since the pandemic, and I will never say anything else. I think it's a misuse of language if you do say pandemic with seriousness. And the missing L is something that I will repeatedly refer to, because the world is missing a lot of love. That's one of the missing L's. And when people say pandemic, not plandemic, there's the other missing L. And so I will only ever refer to it as a plandemic. And I'm not going to spend, and as you are not, Phil, we're not going to spend time treading carefully about why it's called a pandemic. There's enough evidence out there. Yeah. And if you are not, I say you, if someone has not yet at least got to the point where they're sitting on the fence about what's going on in this world, something's just not right. Yeah. And then really, this isn't for you, this podcast, because you're not going to be able to resonate with where we're coming from and where we want to go with our listeners, which is to get through this period of transition out on the other side, however long that takes, whatever that looks like, and begin that process of building the world that we know we can as good souls, life lovers, and world helpers. And that world, I honestly believe, can be truly special. It's not an overstatement to say we could create heaven on earth. Shit, we have a lot of cleaning up to do. We've got a lot of cleaning up to do. There's a big mess. There's a lot of healing to go through. There's a lot of reconciliation. There's a lot of forgiveness. Right? There's a lot of work to do, a lot. And I thought this before 2020, before people had been injected with so-called nanobots and, nanotechnology, and before the toxic propaganda that's dividing us more and more and more, right? I thought we had a big job to do before that. Now, the level of division and the level of belief that some people have in the mainstream narrative is beyond repair.
Well, yeah, maybe not.
Some people, I would say, and this is with some people, there is no coming back. There's some people out there that they're gone. They are completely not open to anything else. They completely trust the government, what they're being told, and they wouldn't listen to anything else.
Okay, so just to pick up on that then, so for the listeners, in the near future episodes, I definitely want to explore this. And if people are beyond, as Ben says, but if people are beyond help, which I'm not sure about, because but anyway, we will explore this. But the bigger picture is so important here. Why is this all happening? Why are people apparently listening to the government still? And why do the people who don't listen to the government not listen to it? So I think this podcast is very much about exploring the bigger picture of things in order to better understand the events and the situations and the happenings in our own life and what we see going on around the whole world. That's absolutely essential. I do think that if anybody tuning in, which would be a human being, even though we've got lots of fellow Earth dwellers and Earthlings, anybody tuning in that desires a better world for themselves and a better world for their children or grandchildren, or a better world for the animals or whatever, anybody with any kind of desire or small flame inside them that wants to do better will definitely be able to handle our podcast. Because although I've had an academic training when I was in 2000, my whole life has all been about the real people, the ordinary working classes and the ordinary middle classes and everybody that all wants to get on. But the reason that we began talking about hurt and harm, the reason for the hurt is an environment that's not conducive to a harmonious way of living. And that's why there's so much ill health and sickness and mental health and psychological problems and emotional problems and so on, because the environment that we've created as a humankind is not supporting us. And so therein lies the solution. We have to create an environment that does support us, or we have to change our own internal relationship and perception of the environment around us. And I think that's what we'll be talking about, isn't it?
Yeah, also about the path beyond, what that looks like, solutions orientated. I've certainly got a very clear path of how I would like to help the world in powerful ways, as do you. So that, but I do, that's a point, and we've got to kind of move to the regular feature in a minute, Phils. But I would say
we could defer that to next time if you want.
I'd like to introduce it.
Okay, but we better do that in a minute. Yeah.
But when you said, we as humanity have created this world that we need to change. If we want to change it, we have to realize that we've created this environment. That really bugs me, because it's like, maybe I'm a bit of a dreamer in terms of it trying to escape responsibility on behalf of humanity. But the way that I look about it, and I apply my Montessori education here, is that the child from birth growing up is completely dependent on the environment. There's two factors in that environment: the human factor and the physical environment, right? And the healthy well-being and the healthy development of that child depends entirely on that environment. And the creation of that environment is done by the adult world. The child, the 2-year-old, the 1-year-old, the 2-year-old, the 3-year-old, during those formative years, those crucial formative years that set the foundations of us, cannot shape the environment. And I would say that on a level, we as humanity are still very much children of life. And although we think we know it all, there's so much that we don't know. Again, this part of this podcast will be the exploration. And so we really are the children of life. And the creation of the environment, this broad world and the mechanics of it, the environment we've been brought up in, this ecosystem of taxation, of the legal system that often favors the rich and the powerful. There's so many factors to the way that the environment has been curated and handled, and media manipulation that shapes humanity, that I believe it's not fair to blame us, the people of humanity,
Agreed,
for the shape of the world. But I think that we could take responsibility for not being astute in seeing what's going on and reacting to what's going on. But I don't blame us. And I think that that's one of the narratives that are going on right now. It always is. It's our fault. We're the problem, like climate change. And so you said, we've created this world. And you might not have meant it this way, but one of the passionate things that I really feel I want to express is that I don't think it is us. I think we're the response. Yeah. Go on, mate.
We personally didn't. Humankind created it.
I know we didn't. I wouldn't. Maybe what I'm saying, there's a small part of humankind that are I feel the instigators, the top level, that shape the condition, the environment in which humanity is not given the chance to thrive, because we're so held down, we're so chained, we're constantly divided through each other. And yes, we go along with the stories of division, we go along with it, but that's like what a child would do with their parent, because a child is being told by the parent, this is what you need to believe, do it. And so I think we need to create that division between the people that are shaping the environment, really truly shaping it, and us as recipients to that shape.
Well, I think this is so much to talk about on this. We can't possibly do it today. If we're not going to blame ourselves, we don't want to blame the elites either. I think we have to eliminate blame entirely from the whole picture, because in my understanding, where you've got blame, you don't have solutions. So the people at the top who are hurting other people and hurting us down below them, they're hurt people. We began our podcast talking about that. So what I mean is that the collective of humankind over the whole history time of humans have created the environment that we have now. And so, yes, I completely agree. We're defenseless as children. We've got no choice. And when we become adults, we do have the choice, but by that time it could be too late. So yeah, look, I feel that this is the kind of stuff that we'll be exploring on our podcast, on all our podcasts, because what we ultimately have to do to fix the remedy what you've just been talking about is that we have to utilize the gifts that we were given by the creator or the divine operator or God or whatever, universal consciousness. We can shape our own environment, and that's the key. We have to learn how to do it, and then that's relatively easy, but then the next bit needs a lot of courage and determination to actually do it. And we can, and people say you can't change the world. Well, you can. You change yourself, and then others may follow you, and in that way you do get to change the world. The world is changeable by all individuals. Humankind can't do anything. It's a word, it's a concept. Humans do things. Humans make changes. So I think that's what we need to explore. But if we're going to do our 5-minute slots, then should we get on to that?
Well, yeah, just to kind of lead into that, that awareness is a key part of that. We have to become aware of the situation.
Awareness.
And one of the key parts that we want to help generate more clarity and awareness about is what you termed as media manipulation, right? So one of the regular features that I'm going to bring to the table, my 5-minute feature. I'd like to keep it to 5 minutes if possible, but sometimes it might trickle over. And then you're going to give the 5-minute reflection. So it's the report and reflection sections, right? My report will be the comparison between two news outlets, and they are naturalnews.com and the BBC. Natural News, and really just to say to listeners that these are really the two broad outlets that I follow, because they are the extreme opposites, and I find it so interesting to view through the lens of these extreme opposites the narrative that is being shared, the so-called manipulation of and the use of propaganda and language, which you talked about, Phil. I mean, when you read the BBC and you see how they use language, it's an art form. It's an art form. And even the governments and policies and, the way that language is used to make people feel guilty or it's just incredible. And that's something that we will go through I think, on an unfolding basis through this podcast. But then Natural News is run by a man called Mike Adams, who's a Texan-based, I'd call American patriot, who's highly intelligent, a scientist, a food expert, a health lover. And he was someone that I think he's probably one of the most censored people on the planet, certainly the earliest. He was deplatformed from all major platforms such as Twitter back in 2014.
Alex Jones goes back further. He's got that.
They have a close relationship.
Yes.
And actually, I would say you're right. The one person that Mike Adams refers to as kind of credibly, there's a few, but one key person that he refers to credibly that sees even further than Mike himself is Alex Jones, right? Yeah. But I don't tune into Alex Jones. Right. If I do, it's through Mike Adams. Right. And so that's a separate story, which I would love to share in the next episode about, because it's a nice story, how I came about to stumble upon Mike Adams, which was during the early part of 2020. But what became so clear as I was following him, weekly, almost daily, really, and then viewing the BBC website, was the extreme difference between the stories that are being told. And so in my 5-minute report and reflection section, what I'd like to do is really bring that to the table on a weekly basis. Yeah. What is Natural News saying about a certain event? And then how does the BBC portray that certain event? And, through those two extremes, I hope that listeners and viewers, if you're watching this, will be able to get a clearer idea about the manipulation through mainstream media.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
So, and then on the back of that, you can then spend 5 minutes with your reflections about my report. So that's my 5-minute introduction, and over to you, Phil.
Excellent. So, I mean, that's a brilliant thing to do, Ben, by contrasting two different media outlets and two very contrasting ones as well. Both, I might add, created by human beings, we assume. And it's brilliant. And I will really enjoy questioning you and reflecting with my thoughts, because language, meaning, and communication is what I do. That's my life. That's where my life turned into when I came to Thailand. So mine's a little bit linked to that, I suppose.
Wait there. You knew what mine was because we discussed it before, but yours, you said you're going to keep it on hold. So I don't know what you're going to share. I don't know what your 5-minute report is, right? So if you're listening to this, you're learning with me, because I don't know what Phil's got in mind for us.
Well, I was going to call it, good call, Ben. I was going to call it philosophy, but it's a bit anyway. What I'm going to do, you may see, everybody will see behind me a few books. Now, my books, the books I get, they might be politics, history, psychology, spirituality, current affairs, all kinds, everything, science, health, a lot of health books, wellness books, the whole lot. And so if I look at all my books, they all add up to the whole that is planet Earth and all the human world on it. And like I said before, I love exploring the bigger picture, and I find that this doesn't happen very much in life. So I want to share the bigger picture as I perceive it with you, Ben, and I'll invite you to question me thoroughly and critically, and leap straight in there and ask questions on that you need clarifying and so on. So what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to call it the book corner.
Okay.
It could be called Phil's book corner, but I'm calling it the book corner. And what I'm going to do, I haven't got time to do it today, so this will be episode 2. I will begin with this book, Eric Fromm, The Sane Society.
Okay.
And what you'll find out is that this was written in 1955, published in 1955. And he had a one that went before this called Escape from Freedom. Right. And that was written in the 40s, just after the Second World War. And he's a psychoanalyst that lived in Germany, fled Hitler's Germany, and relocated in America. But what this clearly shows, and I've got books that go further back, clearly shows that all the problems that many people think have just started in our world today, no, they've been around for decades, probably centuries. So this is why I feel optimistic, because I think that this real turbulent time, the greatest motivator for change is pain. When we're comfortable, why would we change anything? If we're comfortable, hey, this is all hunky-dory, I don't need to change. Pain is the greatest motivator, and our human family is going through a lot of pain at the moment. So what I'm going to do is basically I'm going to read out a little bit from a book, one of my book choices each week. And I'll probably read about a 1 or 2 minute section, and then I'll comment on it. And then that'll be the 5 minutes, and then the reflection part of that will be you asking me any questions. And it may well be that this often may provide a background to your 5-minute report and reflection that is contrasting to opposite kinds of media. So so we're going to have so just to clarify for listeners, we're going to have a conversation that just flows, but each week we will bring our own 5-minute report and reflection. So mine is the book corner, Ben's is what do you call it? Media manipulation?
Not sure yet, but at the moment it's just natural news versus the BBC. It's just simple as that.
So that's going to be like 5 minutes of our report, each report, and then we'll have another 5 minutes of reflection. So that'll take 20 minutes, and the other sort of 30, 40 minutes, we've been thinking that we'd like to tackle 1 major or 2 major issues each week. Bringing stuff to the table that we want to talk about. Yeah.
And as this unfolds, if we do keep going, which I think we'd like to do, we do want to expand this to invite guests on. I'd love to. It's not just going to be always going to be me and you rambling, because we could do that, by the way. But I'd like to, we'd like to bring other minds and guests, and really just kind of probe the interesting people out there as much as possible. That can help play a role in helping us transition through this time of turbulence. So, yeah, we're in the last minute of the hour, and anything to round up from your side, Phil?
Well, I've enjoyed the way this has gone. I hope the listeners and viewers have enjoyed it. We're raw, rough, and ready at the moment. We're not doing any editing. We haven't got any intro music. We haven't got any outro music. But you know, we will get there. We're both pretty busy creating our own ventures and new businesses, which is all part of impacting on the world. And I think we're both coming at it through a sort of an educational perspective. I will just close by saying that I think the school systems are rotten, and I think they're the cause of all the problems. And it's not to blame anybody. No, I don't. There's nobody to be blamed. Yeah, if you're a criminal and you kill 100 people, you should go to prison. But you know, understanding is our way out of our mess, and understanding doesn't occur when we're too busy blaming and pointing fingers. So yeah, that's it. I've enjoyed the first podcast. I hope everybody tuning in has enjoyed it, and I guess you have as well, Ben.
Yeah, I'm coming out of the back of teaching the toddlers each day when I'm doing this. So if ever I'm a little bit flabbergasted and low energy, it's because I've been giving all my energy in a 3-hour session working with toddlers, which is intense work, highly rewarding, but physically and emotionally demanding.
Did you think that you came here with low energy today?
I think that it actually helps me. And as I said at the beginning,
do you feel that you had low energy?
Yeah, I feel like I came with a low energy.
No, rubbish.
Oh, I do. I'm telling you what I felt when I came to it, right?
Sorry.
Wait.
What I mean is that you don't appear to have low energy. You appear to be intelligent, forthright, erudite, and all those things.
Yeah, but what I'm saying was that I came with a low energy. I came.
Okay.
I came tired. I came a little bit sort of okay, now I've got to do this next, and because it's just one thing after another right now.
Yeah.
But how I'm leaving is a different feeling.
Good.
I'm leaving feeling energized. I feel like I'm ready to go into the next thing, which is the school run, straight to collect the children and take them to swimming. That's what I'm going to be doing after every session. So I've enjoyed it. I have. I think the way that I'm feeling now is a testimony to the process. I think that we've got some creases to iron out, but for the sake of, at the end of the day, I don't want to give a fuck really about what people think about this. And I'm sorry to use profanity, but I need to say that because that's where I'm coming from. I do not want to have any inkling of, oh, what do the listeners, do they care? Because I don't want that concern to drive me. The first thing is about having an enjoyable conversation with you in the moment, Phil. And through that process of us being ourselves naturally, talking about things that we care about that are of salient relevance to our world, that that people naturally gravitate towards that. The people that we want to speak to, the good souls, life lovers, and world helpers.
Well, you said at the beginning that you thought this would be therapy. So if you came in with low energy and you're leaving with more energy, you have been healed, man.
And I hope that as we close this, people listening have got a slightest sense of therapy just by listening to two English expats living in Thailand ramble on in a slightly coherent manner.
One expat and one accidental emigrant.
Yeah, I'll take that. So yeah, until the next week, we'll be doing this each Wednesday, and I don't know which is the time recording, but not sure yet when we're going to post them. Until the next episode, I think it's over and out from us. Is that right?
Indeed. Great to chat to you, Ben, and we'll catch up next week, eh?
And so you're going to press stop, and that's the end of it. That's our, and we're not going to speak until next week. Is that right?
No, that's not right. You've just given the game away, man.
What's that?
I'm going to stop the recording, and I just want to say one or two things after that.
Oh, do you? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We'll do that. But then after that, each week, we're not speaking until we call, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So that we're just fresh off the bat, going to go into the conversation. So thanks, everyone, for listening. We creeped over by 3 or 4 minutes, but not bad for a first go. Until next week.
Indeed. Thank you, Ben. Cheers, everybody in the world.
Cheers.
See you next week.
Take care.